The security guard's flashlight trembled in his weathered hands as he approached the marble mausoleum. Something was terribly wrong at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. Marcus Rivera had walked these peaceful grounds for 15 years, but tonight felt different. The California air hung thick with an unsettling energy that made his skin crawl. It was 2:47 a.m. when Marcus first noticed the disturbed earth, near the King of Pop's final resting place. Fresh dirt scattered around the pristine white marble structure told a story that chilled him to the bone. Someone had been here recently. Someone with tools. Someone with a purpose that went far beyond paying respects to the legendary performer. The mausoleum stood like a fortress against the darkness, its polished surface reflecting the pale moonlight. Michael Jackson's name gleamed in golden letters across the entrance, but something about the scene felt violated. Marcus had seen plenty of strange things during his night shifts, overzealous fans, conspiracy theorists, even treasure hunters, but this was different. This felt calculated, professional, and deeply disturbing. As he circled the structure, Marcus discovered something that made his blood run cold. A small hole had been drilled near the base of the marble wall, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. The edges were clean, precise, suggesting expensive equipment had been used. This wasn't the work of some amateur grave robber or delusional fan. This was something far more sophisticated and sinister. His radio crackled to life, startling him in the silence. "Marcus, everything okay on your rounds?" came the voice of his supervisor from the security office. Marcus hesitated, staring at the evidence before him. Should he report this immediately, or investigate further? His instincts told him that whatever had happened here was bigger than a simple break-in. "All quiet down here, sir," Marcus lied, his voice barely steady. Something deep inside warned him that involving others too quickly might be dangerous. He needed to understand what he was dealing with before alerting anyone else. The hole was small enough that it could have gone unnoticed during regular maintenance, which meant whoever created it wanted to remain undetected. Marcus pulled out his phone and began taking photographs, careful to capture every angle of the disturbed area. The flash illuminated details that made his hands shake even more. Tiny fragments of what appeared to be electronic equipment lay scattered in the grass. Someone hadn't just been digging, they had been installing something. But what? And why here, at the resting place of one of the world's most famous entertainers? The wind picked up, rustling through the ancient oak trees that surrounded the mausoleum. In that moment, Marcus heard something that made his heart nearly stop beating. A faint humming sound was coming from inside the marble structure itself. It was electronic, rhythmic, and definitely not natural. Whatever had been installed was active, powered, and operational. Marcus pressed his ear against the cool marble, confirming his worst fears. The humming was definitely coming from within the mausoleum. Someone had not only broken into the sacred space, but had left behind some kind of device. The implications were staggering. Was someone monitoring the site, recording activity, or was something even more sinister taking place? As he stepped back to process this discovery, Marcus noticed fresh footprints in the soft earth, footprints that didn't match his own security boots. The prints were smaller, more expensive looking, suggesting dress shoes or professional footwear. Multiple sets of prints indicated that this had been a coordinated effort involving several people. The security guard's mind raced with possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. Michael Jackson's death had been surrounded by controversy and conspiracy theories. His fans had never stopped questioning the official story, and rumors of hidden secrets had persisted for years. Could someone be attempting to uncover evidence that had been buried with the King of Pop? Or was this about something else entirely? Something that certain powerful people would kill to keep hidden? Marcus made a decision that would change his life forever. Instead of calling for backup, he would investigate this mystery himself. He owed it to Michael Jackson's memory and to the millions of fans who still mourned their idol. Whatever secrets lay within that marble tomb, Marcus was determined to uncover the truth. As he prepared to leave and gather proper equipment for a more thorough investigation, Marcus caught sight of something that made his blood freeze. A black sedan with tinted windows sat parked across the street from a cemetery entrance, its engine running. Someone was watching. Someone knew he had discovered their secret. The game had officially begun, and Marcus Rivera was now a player, whether he wanted to be or not. 24 hours after his shocking discovery, Marcus Rivera found himself sitting across from investigative journalist Sarah Chun in a dimly lit diner 30 miles from Forest Lawn. Sarah had built her reputation exposing celebrity cover-ups and corporate conspiracies, but nothing had prepared her for what Marcus was about to reveal. The photographs on his phone told a story that could shake the entertainment industry to its very foundations. "You're absolutely certain about what you heard?" Sarah asked, studying the images of the electronic fragments and the precisely drilled hole. Her years of experience had taught her to be skeptical, but Marcus's evidence was undeniable. Someone with serious resources and technical expertise had violated Michael Jackson's final resting place for reasons that went far beyond mere grave robbing. Marcus nodded grimly. "The humming is still there. I checked again last night during my patrol. Whatever they installed is definitely active and drawing power from somewhere. But here's the thing that really scares me. I've been researching the ownership records for that section of the cemetery, and the financial trail leads to some very powerful people." Sarah's eyes widened as Marcus pulled out a folder containing documents he had obtained through careful investigation. The paperwork revealed a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts that ultimately connected to several major entertainment executives and pharmaceutical companies. The same names that had appeared in various conspiracy theories surrounding Michael Jackson's death were now linked to his burial site through these financial records. "This is bigger than we thought," Sarah whispered, her mind racing with the implications. "If these documents are authentic, we're looking at a coordinated effort involving some of the most influential people in Hollywood and beyond. But what could they possibly want from a man who's been dead for over a decade?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Marcus had reached out to Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a former pathologist who had worked on several high-profile celebrity autopsy cases. Dr. Harper had agreed to meet them at the diner, bringing with her information that would transform their understanding of the entire situation. Dr. Harper arrived precisely on time, her professional demeanor masking what Marcus sensed was deep concern. She ordered coffee and sat down, immediately focusing on the photographs Marcus had taken. Her reaction was immediate and alarming. "I've seen this type of equipment before," Dr. Harper said quietly, pointing to the electronic fragments. "These components are from advanced biological monitoring devices. They're designed to detect and analyze organic compounds, DNA traces, and other biological materials. Someone is definitely looking for something specific inside that mausoleum." Sarah leaned forward, her investigative instincts fully engaged. What could they possibly be monitoring? Michael Jackson has been deceased for years. What biological evidence could still exist? Dr. Harper's expression grew even more serious. "There are certain preservation techniques and environmental conditions that can maintain biological materials far longer than most people realize. But more importantly, there have been persistent rumors in the medical community about certain substances that were allegedly found in Michael Jackson's system at the time of his death, substances that certain powerful individuals would do anything to keep secret." Marcus felt the pieces of the puzzle beginning to form a terrifying picture. "You're talking about evidence that could implicate people in his death, aren't you? Evidence that might have been preserved somehow." The pathologist nodded slowly. Michael Jackson's personal physician wasn't the only one with access to him during his final days. There were others, people with connections to pharmaceutical companies, entertainment executives with billions at stake, and individuals who had very good reasons to want him silenced permanently. Sarah's phone buzzed with an urgent message. As she read it, her face went pale. "We have a problem. My editor just received a call from someone claiming to represent powerful clients. They're demanding that I cease any investigation related to Michael Jackson immediately, or face serious consequences." The threat confirmed what they had all begun to suspect. They were dealing with people who had unlimited resources and were willing to use any means necessary to protect their secrets. But it also meant they were on the right track. Someone was desperately afraid of what they might discover. Dr. Harper reached into her briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Before I forget why I really came here tonight, I need to give you this. It contains information that a colleague of mine someone who was involved in the original investigation, asked me to deliver if anyone ever started asking the right questions about Michael Jackson's death. Marcus took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were medical records, toxicology reports, and photographs that had never been made public. The documents painted a picture of systematic poisoning over several months, involving drugs that were not available through normal medical channels. The evidence pointed to a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of the entertainment industry. My colleague disappeared 3 weeks after Michael Jackson's death, Dr. Harper continued. His house was searched, his computers were confiscated, and all his research vanished. But he had hidden copies of everything, and he made me promise to deliver them if the truth ever had a chance of coming to light. As they studied the documents, a pattern emerged that connected directly to the equipment found at the mausoleum. Someone was using advanced technology to confirm that certain evidence had been buried with Michael Jackson, evidence that could destroy careers, topple corporations, and send powerful people to prison for the rest of their lives. The game had evolved beyond simple grave robbing. They were now dealing with a cover-up that involved murder, conspiracy, and the systematic suppression of evidence that could change history. And somewhere in the darkness, the people responsible were watching their every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. The abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Los Angeles hummed with activity despite the late hour. Sarah Chen had never imagined that her investigation into Michael Jackson's disturbed grave would lead her into the heart of an underground network dedicated to exposing celebrity murder conspiracies. The group called themselves the Truth Seekers, and they had been operating in secret for over a decade. Marcus Rivera stood beside her, still wearing his security uniform from Forest Lawn, as they were introduced to the network's leader, a former FBI agent named David Torres, who had been forced into early retirement after getting too close to the truth about several high-profile deaths. His weathered face bore the scars of someone who had fought powerful enemies and lived to tell about it. "Welcome to the real world," Torres said grimly as he activated a wall of monitors displaying surveillance footage, financial records, and classified documents. "What you've discovered at the cemetery is just the tip of the iceberg. Michael Jackson's death was part of a systematic elimination program targeting entertainers who posed threats to certain corporate and political interests." The evidence displayed on the screens was overwhelming. Dozens of celebrities who had died under suspicious circumstances were connected through a web of shared doctors, pharmaceutical suppliers, and entertainment executives. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Anyone who challenged the system or threatened to expose corruption was systematically silenced. Sarah studied the timeline displayed on the main monitor. All of these deaths occurred within a 5-year period, and they all involved the same medical examiner, the same law enforcement officials, and the same media spin. This isn't coincidence. This is organized murder. A new voice emerged from the shadows as Dr. Amanda Price stepped forward. She had been Michael Jackson's backup physician before being mysteriously dismissed just weeks before his death. Her survival had been purely accidental. She had been out of the country during the critical period when other potential witnesses were being eliminated. "I tried to warn him," Dr. Price said, her voice heavy with guilt and regret. Michael knew someone was slowly poisoning him, but he didn't know who to trust. He started hiding biological samples of his own blood and hair, hoping to preserve evidence if something happened to him. That's what they're looking for in his grave, the proof he left behind. Marcus felt the full weight of the conspiracy settling on his shoulders. So the equipment of the mausoleum is designed to detect whether those samples still exist. They're trying to confirm that the evidence was actually buried with him. Dr. Price nodded. Michael was smarter than they gave him credit for. He knew his life was in danger, and he took precautions. But what he didn't know was that certain people had advanced knowledge of his burial arrangements. They may have already retrieved what they were looking for. Torres activated another screen, showing recent financial transactions involving several major entertainment companies. 3 days after Michael's death, over $50 million changed hands between various shell companies. That money was payment for a job completion, the successful elimination of a threat, and the recovery of dangerous evidence. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just dealing with a murder cover-up. They were confronting a systematic program of assassination and evidence destruction that had been operating for years. Michael Jackson had been just one victim in a long list of entertainers who had been silenced to protect powerful interests. Sarah's investigative instincts kicked into overdrive. If they already have the evidence, why is the monitoring equipment still active? What are they still looking for? The answer came from an unexpected source. A young hacker named Alex Morrison had been monitoring communications between the suspects for months, and his findings were disturbing. They never found everything, Alex explained, pulling up encrypted messages on his laptop. Michael Jackson was more paranoid than they realized. He created multiple insurance policies, different samples hidden in different locations. The encrypted communications revealed a frantic search ongoing for over a decade. The people responsible for Michael Jackson's death had discovered that he had created an elaborate system of evidence preservation, with biological samples and documentation hidden in multiple secure locations. The monitoring equipment at his grave was just one part of a comprehensive surveillance network designed to track down every piece of potentially damaging evidence. Dr. Price provided the final piece of the puzzle. 2 weeks before his death, Michael asked me to help him set up what he called his truth insurance. He gave me sealed packages to deliver to specific locations if anything happened to him. I was supposed to be contacted by certain people using predetermined code words, but after his death, I got scared and went into hiding instead. Torres leaned forward with intense interest. Do you still have those packages? Do you know where they were supposed to be delivered? The doctor nodded slowly. I kept everything in a safety deposit box, hoping that someday it would be safe to complete Michael's final wishes. But I never imagined the conspiracy was this extensive, or that so many people had been killed to keep it secret. As the pieces of Michael Jackson's elaborate insurance plan became clear, the group realized they were holding the keys to exposing one of the most extensive murder conspiracies in modern history. But they also understood that possessing this knowledge made them all targets for elimination. The underground network had spent years preparing for this moment, the chance to finally expose the truth and bring justice for Michael Jackson and the other victims. But they also knew that their enemies had unlimited resources and would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. Outside the warehouse, black sedans began positioning themselves at strategic locations. The people responsible for over a decade of cover-up had finally located the truth seekers. The final confrontation was about to begin, and the stakes could not be higher. The fate of justice itself hung in the balance as two opposing forces prepared for a battle that would determine whether the truth about Michael Jackson's death would finally come to light or be buried forever. The emergency meeting convened at dawn in an abandoned church 40 miles outside Los Angeles. The truth seekers had barely escaped the warehouse raid that claimed the lives of 3 network members, including Alex Morrison, the young hacker who had been monitoring the conspiracy's communications. His final act had been uploading critical files to a secure server before enemy operatives silenced him forever. David Torres, the former FBI agent, stood at the makeshift altar addressing the remaining survivors. His voice carried the weight of someone who had lost too many battles, but refused to surrender the war. They're escalating because they know we're close to exposing everything. Alex's sacrifice gave us the final pieces of the puzzle, but it also means they'll stop at nothing to eliminate us before we can reveal the truth. Sarah Chen clutched her laptop containing the encrypted files Alex had died protecting. The documents revealed the complete scope of the conspiracy, a systematic program of celebrity assassinations orchestrated by a coalition of entertainment executives, pharmaceutical companies, and corrupt government officials. Michael Jackson had been the highest-profile victim, but he was far from the only one. Dr. Amanda Price sat in the front pew, finally ready to reveal the location of Michael Jackson's hidden evidence packages. The safety deposit box is in a bank in Switzerland, she announced. Michael chose that location because he believed Swiss banking laws would provide protection even after his death. But accessing those packages requires 3 separate keys, and I only have one of them. Marcus Rivera, still processing the violence he had witnessed, stepped forward with grim determination. We need to get to those packages before they do. If we can retrieve Michael's evidence and combine it with what Alex discovered, we'll have enough proof to expose the entire conspiracy. Torres pulled up a holographic projection, showing global communications intercepts. The problem is that our enemies know about the Swiss connection now. Alex's final upload included communication logs showing they've been monitoring international banking transactions related to Michael Jackson's estate. They're probably already positioning assets in Switzerland. The revelation hit the group like a physical blow. Their enemies had resources that spanned multiple countries and included corrupted officials at the highest levels of various governments. Exposing the conspiracy would require more than just gathering evidence. It would need a coordinated global revelation that couldn't be suppressed or discredited. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the pathologist who had first identified the monitoring equipment, emerged from the shadows with news that changed everything. I've been in contact with investigative journalists in 12 different countries. They're all prepared to simultaneously release the evidence once we provide it to them. The conspiracy can suppress 1 or 2 news outlets, but they can't silence the entire global media simultaneously. Sarah felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. That could work, but we need ironclad evidence that can't be disputed or discredited. Michael Jackson's biological samples combined with the financial records and communication intercepts should be enough, but getting to Switzerland alive will be nearly impossible. The answer came from an unexpected alliance. Maria Santos, Michael Jackson's former personal assistant, who had been presumed dead for years, stepped out of the church confessional. She had been living in hiding since discovering her employer's murder, but Alex's death had convinced her that remaining silent was no longer an option. "I have the second key," Maria announced, producing a small metallic device from her jacket. "Michael gave it to me 3 days before his death, along with instructions that I was never supposed to use it unless the truth was in danger of being buried forever. That time has come." The group stared at the key in amazement, realizing they were now 2/3 of the way to accessing Michael Jackson's final insurance policy. But the identity of the third key holder remained a mystery that could determine whether their mission succeeded or failed catastrophically. Torres activated a secure communication system and began coordinating with international allies. "We have contacts in Swiss banking who can provide protection once we're in the country, but getting there safely will require a coordinated deception operation. Our enemies will be monitoring all obvious travel routes." The plan that emerged was audacious in its simplicity and terrifying in its risks. The team would split into multiple groups, using different routes and identities to converge on Switzerland from various directions. Each group would carry partial evidence, ensuring that if some members were captured or killed, the mission could still succeed. Sarah would travel as a technology journalist, covering a fabricated story about cryptocurrency developments. Marcus would use his security credentials to join a professional conference for cemetery management professionals. Dr. Price would attend a medical convention in Geneva, while Maria would travel as a tourist visiting relatives. But as they prepared to separate, Dr. Harper delivered devastating news. "Our communication intercepts show that they've identified the third key holder. It's Michael Jackson's daughter, Paris. She's been under surveillance for years, but she doesn't even know she possesses the final piece of her father's evidence cache." The revelation transformed their mission from difficult to seemingly impossible. Paris Jackson was one of the most recognizable people in the world, constantly surrounded by security and media attention. Approaching her without alerting the conspiracy would require precision, timing, and an enormous amount of luck. Torres made the decision that would determine their fate. "We proceed with the original plan, but we add a new objective. Once we reach Switzerland, we make contact with Paris Jackson through secure channels and convince her to join us. Her father's final gift to the world depends on her courage to finish what he started." As dawn broke over the abandoned church, the surviving members of the Truth Seekers prepared to embark on a journey that would either expose one of history's most extensive criminal conspiracies or result in their deaths. Michael Jackson's legacy hung in the balance, along with the lives of countless future victims who could be saved if the truth finally emerged from the shadows. The war between justice and corruption was entering its final phase, and the outcome would determine whether the king of pop's death had meaning beyond tragedy. Somewhere in the Swiss Alps, the secrets that could change the world waited to be revealed, protected by banking laws and hidden behind layers of security that had kept them safe for over a decade. The underground vault beneath the Swiss bank stretched into darkness, its walls lined with safety deposit boxes containing secrets that could topple governments and destroy empires. Sarah Chin stood before box number 2457, holding her breath as the three keys, recovered through sacrifice, determination, and the courage of Michael Jackson's daughter Paris, were inserted simultaneously into their designated locks. Paris Jackson had arrived in Geneva just hours earlier, smuggled into the country through a complex network of allies who had risked everything to protect Michael Jackson's final message to the world. Her hands trembled as she turned her key, knowing that this moment would forever change how the world remembered her father and understood the true nature of his death. The metallic click of the final lock echoed through the vault as the box opened, revealing contents that exceeded even their most optimistic expectations. Michael Jackson had created the most comprehensive evidence archive in criminal history, documenting not just his own murder, but an entire network of celebrity assassinations spanning 2 decades. Dr. Amanda Price carefully removed sealed vials containing biological samples that had been preserved using advanced techniques unknown to mainstream forensic science. He worked with scientists from 3 different countries to develop preservation methods that would maintain DNA integrity for decades, she explained. These samples will prove conclusively what substances were used to murder him and who had access to those specific compounds. But the biological evidence was only the beginning. The box contained thousands of pages of documentation, including recorded conversations with entertainment executives discussing elimination plans, financial records showing payment for contract killings, and photographs of meetings between pharmaceutical representatives and corrupt medical examiners. Sarah's hands shook as she examined audio recordings labeled with dates spanning Michael Jackson's final months. His voice, weak but determined, described systematic poisoning attempts, threats against his life, and his growing awareness that powerful forces were orchestrating his murder. The recordings also revealed his methodical documentation of every suspicious incident, every threatening phone call, and every attempt to silence him. David Torres, monitoring security feeds from his mobile command center, confirmed that their enemies had discovered their location. Multiple teams are converging on the bank from different directions. We have maybe 20 minutes before they breach the building security. We need to upload everything immediately. The transmission began as journalists in 12 countries simultaneously received the complete archive through encrypted channels that Alex Morrison had died creating. The evidence flooded newsrooms in New York, London, Tokyo, Berlin, and 8 other major cities, making suppression impossible despite the conspiracy's global reach. Paris Jackson stepped forward to address a secure video connection linking her to news outlets worldwide. Her voice carried the strength of someone who had finally found justice for her father. My dad knew he was going to die, but he refused to let his murderers escape justice. He spent his final months creating this evidence archive because he believed the truth would eventually find a way to emerge from the darkness. The impact was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes of the first broadcasts, law enforcement agencies across multiple countries began announcing investigations into the documented conspiracy. Entertainment executives resigned in disgrace as their recorded conversations admitting to murder were played on global television. Pharmaceutical companies saw their stock prices collapse as evidence of their involvement in systematic poisoning became public knowledge. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, analyzing the biological samples in a mobile laboratory, confirmed what the audio recordings had suggested. The toxicology evidence proves that Michael Jackson was murdered using a combination of drugs that could only have been obtained through specific pharmaceutical channels. The chemical signatures match substances that were used in at least 15 other suspicious celebrity deaths. The Swiss bank security system activated as enemy operatives breached the building's perimeter. But the truth seekers had planned for this eventuality. Emergency protocols triggered the release of additional evidence caches hidden in banks across 6 continents, ensuring that even if they were captured or killed, the complete truth would continue to emerge. Marcus Rivera, maintaining watch at the vault entrance, reported that law enforcement was finally arriving to provide protection. Years of corruption and intimidation had ended as honest officers, empowered by undeniable evidence, moved to arrest the conspirators who had operated with impunity for decades. The final piece of Michael Jackson's insurance policy was a video message recorded just days before his death. His image appeared on screens worldwide as he addressed his fans directly, explaining the conspiracy that was about to claim his life and expressing his hope that justice would eventually prevail. "I'm recording this message because I know my time is running out." Michael Jackson's voice echoed through the vault and simultaneously across the globe. "Powerful people want me dead because I refuse to remain silent about the corruption I've witnessed. But death cannot silence the truth if brave people are willing to carry it forward. My final gift to the world is the evidence that will expose these murderers and prevent them from claiming more victims." As law enforcement secured the bank and began arresting the operatives who had hunted them across continents, Sarah realized that Michael Jackson's death had not been in vain. His methodical documentation and elaborate insurance policy had created the most successful exposure of institutional corruption in modern history. Paris Jackson stood in the vault, surrounded by her father's evidence, tears streaming down her face as she understood the magnitude of his sacrifice. He had known his investigation would cost him his life, but he had chosen to continue anyway, believing that future victims could be saved if the truth emerged. The conspiracy that had operated for decades crumbled within hours as arrests were made simultaneously across multiple countries. Entertainment executives, pharmaceutical representatives, corrupt medical examiners, and government officials found themselves facing murder charges backed by irrefutable evidence. Michael Jackson's final resting place would never be disturbed again, but his true legacy had finally been revealed. The King of Pop had orchestrated the exposure of history's most extensive murder conspiracy from beyond the grave, ensuring that his death would serve as the key that unlocked justice for countless victims. The secrets that had been hidden in darkness were now illuminated for the entire world to see, proving that truth, no matter how deeply buried, will eventually find a way to emerge and claim its victory over corruption and evil. As the sun set over Geneva, the surviving truth-seekers knew that Michael Jackson's spirit could finally rest in peace, knowing that his courage had saved lives and brought justice to a world that had nearly forgotten the difference between truth and deception.